G.I. Joe's first full-on musical number, and it's criminally overlooked. But did Satin do it best, or are we still rocking with Cold Slither? Where do you stand in this animated battle of the bands? It's part 3 of the Pyramid of Darkness. This is G.I. Retro.
Now, back to G.I. Joe.
Yo, Joe, and welcome, everyone, back to G.I. Retro, where we are rewatching and celebrating each and every episode of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, the Sunbow Run, and we are into part 3 of the Pyramid of Darkness, 3 Cubes to Darkness, originally aired September 18th, 1985. And right off the bat, I just want to say, this is my favorite episode of this miniseries. It's one of my favorite episodes of the entire run because I think it's just so much fun. So there's a lot to dive into and highlight today. But the first thing, I want to pay off the cliffhanger from the last episode because this miniseries on a little bit of a roll with the cliffhangers. We had Shipwreck and Snake Eyes last episode having to get by the security robot and the spikes and all that good stuff. And now we've got Flint and Lady J sinking into that goo, whatever you want to call it. I think Wild Bill calls it mud. But let's go ahead and pay off that cliffhanger because similar to last episode, this is one of my very favorites.
It's good to breathe again, even if the quarters are a little cramped.
I don't know. I think it's rather cozy for a bubble.
So, where do we go from here? Not us personally, I mean the mission.
Why, to the top, naturally.
Flint and Lady J have chemistry, and there's just no denying it here, that romantic tension being ratcheted up. I love it. I love seeing Flint get flustered when they're in their close quarters, and similarly, Lady J blushing when talking to Flint and him sort of firing back, you know, the innuendos between the two of them. It was great stuff. And also, once again, getting to see Lady J use those javelins in a variety of different ways. Like she's been compared to before, the Green Arrow of G.I. Joe, using those javelins in this case instead of bows and arrows. We'll get back to Flint and Lady J, but let's leave them there right now. Let's go ahead and go to the Snake Club where Shipwreck, Snake Eyes, Polly, and Timber make their way into this seedy nightclub in Enterprise City. Very similar to the Cobra Cafe that Flint and Mutt sort of made their way into. Although I guess this one much more metropolitan than the one that Flint and Mutt were in on this sort of the outskirts. This one less Mos Eisley, and again, very much so more metro here. So they're in the Snake Club, and that is when we get introduced to Satin on the main stage singing her hit song, The Cobra That Got Away. Let's take another listen.
Cobra that got away changed my life one rainy day. On our first rendezvous, we held hands and I heard him say, if you want a romance from me, you're barking up the wrong tree, 'cause Destro has the first call on my life.
As soon as the song ends, grab him.
Time and when he shouts, Cobra fight, I'll go by day, go by night. Goodbye, miss, I've got to say, Cobra that got away. Yeah.
The Cobra That Got Away is an absolute banger, and I love Satin. Her appearance in this miniseries is awesome, and shout out to Ketty Lester, the voice actress and singer for Satin, an accomplished singer, had top 5 hits on the US and UK charts. And I just found out in doing the research for this episode, went to my alma mater of San Francisco State University as well. So that I had no idea, but that was really cool to learn in the research for this episode. But I love The Cobra That Got Away. I think it's such a great song. It's so catchy. I will always rewatch this episode and delight in hearing that music. I think it's great. And I think it's kind of overlooked and underrated, as I said at the top, doesn't get the same love that Cold Slither does to G.I. Joe history. I mean, Hasbro, Super 7, the G.I. Joe community has really shoved all in recent years in sort of, really embracing Cold Slither. And I totally see why. This is not a knock on Cold Slither whatsoever. Clearly, I love Cold Slither, but it is interesting that sort of not even getting a whiff of that same sort of attention and nostalgic embrace is The Cobra That Got Away. It's a fantastic song in its own right. No offense to Zartan and the Dreadnoks, but a more accomplished singer singing it. It appears in multiple episodes that we're going to see way down the line here in G.I. Joe. Satin herself will pop back up. So it's just interesting to me that The Cobra That Got Away doesn't get the same sort of attention. And look, Cold Slither is so much fun. That episode as a whole, the song, the whole 80s hair metal band that the Dreadnoks and Zartan become to sing that song. It's great. But I definitely think, and this is part of what's so fun about GI Retro, is making sure that every episode and all the things within get their proper due, respect, and highlighted. And The Cobra That Got Away is going to get its love in this episode because that song rules. So I want to put it to you. Where do you come down? The Cobra That Got Away or Cold Slither? What is your favorite as we rewatch together? Did you maybe overlook The Cobra That Got Away? Will it be shooting up the charts of your Spotify Wrapped this year? I know it's going to be near the top of mine for sure, along with Cold Slither. So where do you come down on that is definitely a question that I want to put to you, because I think it's too overlooked and very underrated. But beyond the dueling for number one on the G.I. Joe / Cobra charts, just that whole introduction scene with Satin is great. And really everything going on at the Snake Club is so much fun. It's my favorite sort of focus point of the episode. And there's a lot going on, and there's a lot to like about this episode. Like I said, my favorite from the miniseries and one of my favorites from the entire run. I mean, we've got Cobra planting their control cubes all over the place. We finally actually rendezvous in the City of the Dead. We go up to the Mountain of Glass. There is a ton going on in this episode, but what continues to draw my attention, and every time I go back and rewatch this miniseries, is what's going on at the Snake Club with Satin, Shipwreck, and Snake Eyes. And just with that whole performance, I love how instantly love-struck Shipwreck is, and even Polly. You can hear Polly whistling when Satin comes over and sits in Shipwreck's lap. And all the scenes at the Snake Club are just maximum fun. I mean, right from the moment that they walk in with Shipwreck having to bribe his way in for a table because he's got a talking parrot and a pet wolf with him. And it also, with the introduction of Satin and Colonel Slash in pursuit, it brings us to our MIA, our missing in action figure, because just like The Cobra That Got Away is underrated, I also think the appearance, especially of Satin, but Colonel Slash as well, is underrated and underrepresented. A character like Satin and a character like Colonel Slash, who just looks awesome. I mean, the trench coat, the hat, the sunglasses with the scar on his cheek. You tell me that we wouldn't have loved that as an action figure in the original line. I know I would have. And it strikes a very different tone and beat from a lot of Cobra. You've got the rank and file type stuff, and then you've got the really out there type stuff, with Crocmaster, who I love, and Raptor and all that. But you could have struck an even different chord, a more sort of street level chord, with somebody like Colonel Slash being incorporated into the line. And as far as Satin goes, being an MIA, maybe she wouldn't have fit exactly in with the original run of G.I. Joe. I would have welcomed her, but I get it. They didn't really do the civilians in that line. Also, I think they had some ideas about maybe that the female characters wouldn't sell as well to, predominantly the boys that were buying them. I think that was disproven. given the popularity of characters like Scarlet, Baroness, and Lady J, etc. But I get it. But looking at it through the lens today, I see no reason why Satin couldn't be a very cool and very popular deep cut Comic-Con exclusive. I mean, if you just released her by herself, whichever line you want to do it in, I'd sign me up. I would go for that right away. You could make the packaging look like Center Stage at the Snake Club. It would be great. You could release her in a 2-pack with Colonel Slash as well. That would be awesome. You could put her in a 3-pack with sort of her cohort civilian helpers from the other 2 miniseries with the beautiful slave girl Selena and with Honolulu West. I would be all about any of that. So those are our MIAs. And while we're talking about Satin and how she fits in with sort of the proud lineage of these civilian helpers in the miniseries to G.I. Joe, I rank her number 1. To me, Satin is at the very top of the list in these miniseries in terms of the characters that get introduced and help G.I. Joe in their missions and their adventures. I rank Satin number 1, then I go the beautiful slave girl Selena, and then I go Honolulu West. To me, Satin clears them all. Just her interactions with Shipwreck are so great, and her backstory. She gets to sing this amazing song that we've talked about. So Satin, underrated and at the tippy top for me of the civilian characters that are in these miniseries. But where do you rank them? Maybe you have Selena at the top or Honolulu West. Let me know. How do you rank the civilians in G.I. Joe? For me, it's Satin all the way. In between belting out hit songs, though, Satin is going to try and help Shipwreck and Snake Eyes make their escape. And the first part of her plan is bringing them up on stage with her to dance. And remember what Shipwreck said earlier this miniseries?
First they want me to fly, now they want me to dive. The minute they ask me to dance, I'm getting out of this outfit.
Shipwreck having to eat his words because he's not going anywhere and he's dancing. Dancing shoes are on, but it's not Shipwreck that steals the show up there. It's not even Satin. It's Snake Eyes who busts out the breakdancing moves. Snake Eyes doing the windmill, the spinneroonie, call it what you will. But one of the most memorable things, for me at least, from this miniseries is the fact that not only can Snake Eyes dance, Snake Eyes can break dance and impressed everybody in the room. And just another example of how much fun this episode is. And the dancing, not just a distraction. Eventually, they use dancing as a weapon. Not quite breakdance fighting.
They're breakdance fighting. Taste my pain!
But they do stop those Cobra troopers from getting to them by doing a little can sweet chin music in their faces. They make a break for it. And really just the whole sequence is great to me. Even the backup dancer claiming that one of the Cobras got fresh with her.
Don't get fresh with me, you bum!
A lot of G.I. Joe hijinks ensuing, some notes of sort of Scooby-Doo with the chasing around and the darkness and everything like that. But ultimately, Satin is able to hide Shipwreck, Snake Eyes, Polly, and Timber away, and she even stands up to Colonel Slash, really using sort of an early version of Talk No Jutsu to Colonel Slash, completely bullies and backs him down just with a verbal tongue lashing and asserting that Cobra Commander is her biggest fan. So Shipwreck and Snake Eyes are safe for the moment, and let's leave them and Satin and the Snake Club right there for now, because this is 3 Cubes to Darkness. And I will say the aptly named episode 3 Cubes to Darkness, because we do see Cobra placing and activating 3 of their control cubes throughout the globe. We've got Destro at the Devil's Playground, putting the finishing touches on activating his, where he is doing battle with Flint, Lady J, and Wild Bill and their troops. Not going great for them, by the way, especially for Flint and Lady J, who almost as soon as they escape drowning, get captured by the very defenses of the control cube itself. So it's not going great for them or the Joe team there. We've got Major Blood up at the Mountain of Glass trying to place his control cube. And it's there that we get to see really Alpine and Bazooka take on a major role in G.I. Joe. And they're 2 big-time fan favorites, and really, as a pairing, they are sort of like for lack of a better phrase, sort of like the buddy cop pairing of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. And that is one of the standout things. And again, they jam a lot complimentary into this episode, and very memorable, the dynamic and the development, and we get to see the friendship between Alpine and Bazooka, and it's really had some good moments.
Of course, your burning question is, how can our guys get up that ice wall, correct? Right. Brilliant analysis. Fortunately, I happen to have an equally brilliant solution. Yodel. You got it, the good old Alpine yodel. Yodel, look out, yeah. Oh, yodel, oh, yeah. Yodel, oh, yeah.
I really enjoy the, by comparison, very talkative Alpine to the almost monosyllabic Bazooka. It's a really fun dynamic that we first get to see, take a prominent role in this episode. And I do have to ask this question, though, because as I was rewatching, it's like, God, it felt like in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of yodeling in pop culture. And I just was like, why? Like, I felt like yodeling, when I was a kid, I saw a lot of that in properties that I was watching. It's like, what was the hold that yodeling had on us? So then, it's kind of like quicksand had a hold on us. It was not a problem, to come up in life. I thought it would be a much bigger deal. Haven't encountered it even once, knock on wood. But yeah, yodeling, a lot of yodeling. Anyway, I digress. We get to see a lot of Alpine and Bazooka, but that third control cube is being placed by the Crimson Twins in the City of the Dead. And finally, we arrive at the City of the Dead. We rendezvous, if you will, at the City of the Dead here. So we get the Crimson Twins and their troops bringing in their control cube into this temple within the City of the Dead, by the way. So a huge undertaking, and we see the very sort of terracotta warrior-inspired ancient guardians that are asleep for now. And that's when Roadblock, Airtight, and Footloose and their backup, more on them in a minute, are making their way, following the Crimson Twins, trying to stop their plan. And that's when Airtight, he steps on the wrong tile, activating the ancient guardians. And, bad step by Airtight, but it did get me thinking, how did he activate them, but the Crimson Twins were, wheeling in that gigantic control cube, and they were able to avoid activating the Ancient Guardians? Just some food for thought. I got to ask the question here. But Airtight does activate them with his false step, and unfortunately, that is what is going to bring us to our "But did you die?" moment of the week.
Did you die?
I got shot.
But did you die?
Apropos, perhaps, that we are getting the "But did you die?" in the City of the Dead. But it was not without competition this week. Certainly there was a Sky Striker I saw that got blowed up something fierce in the, right in the foreground. But the main competition comes from Alpine and Bazooka, when Bazooka takes a little tumble and causes that avalanche. And, when I saw it, I was like, gosh, was this like originally meant as to be a cliffhanger of the episode? But no, they just sort of move right past it. But that certainly could have been the DYD. But what I kept coming back to, and it's sort of a more blink and you miss it kind of thing, and sort of a horror movie type vibe here. But once those Ancient Guardians get activated, we've got Roadblock, we've got Airtight and Footloose. Clearly they're the main characters, but the G.I. Joe's equivalent of the red shirts, the green shirts, and those green shirts have a bad time courtesy of those Ancient Guardians. I mean, we see each one of them just get sort of plucked and removed for the rest of the episode. And what are we left to think? That they just picked them up and gently put them down behind them as they were going after, Roadblock and the rest of his crew? No, the green shirts are dead. So that is absolutely our "But did you die?" moment of this episode, getting wiped out of the episode by those Ancient Guardians. And let's stick around in the City of the Dead for another minute, because it's here in the City of the Dead that we get a real standout showing from Roadblock. Once they become aware that the Ancient Guardians are activated, the battle is on, and Roadblock is leading the charge, taking the fight really well to those ancient guardians, and such a great sort of villain to have in this episode because they just let the Joes just sort of wreck them, just churning them into clay and dust left and right. Roadblock, like a hook shot with their grenade, calling out 2 points. And then later on in the battle, there's like that other variant of the ancient guardians that are activated that are going at the Crimson Twins, the skeletal ones that have lightsabers apparently. And Roadblock keeping the pressure on and keeping the sports analogies going, using that giant, marble globe or whatever, using that like a oversized bowling ball to take out those ancient guardians. Roadblock is just all over the place, even capturing Tomax, one of the Crimson Twins. Doesn't stop the control cube from being activated though. And in fact, all of Cobra, Destro, Major Blood, and the Crimson Twins are able to activate their 3 control cubes. And the plan is starting to be put into action. And that's when I want to shout out, because we get a very brief stopover into Space Station Delta because we see Zartan help sort of activate those control cubes, and a quick cameo from Duke, who is still captured.
Savor this moment, Duke. It marks the beginning of your end.
So definitely not the best run in this miniseries for Duke, not his best showing. Still captured, but still alive at least. And, good to see Zartan as well as always. But this episode ends, actually. We pop back up to the Mountain of Glass where Alpine and Bazooka, they have survived that avalanche. Bazooka's at least selling it a little bit, but we get a brief but memorable appearance from Storm Shadow along with some snow serpents who blast Alpine and Bazooka off on this ice flow, essentially dooming them to the harsh elements up there at the Mountain of Glass, and that will sort them out.
The elements shall see to your destiny, G.I. Joe. The cold and the icy sea will be far kinder to you than Cobra. Farewell!
But the cliffhanger that we get is actually them being worried about facing off with some leopard seals. And maybe on paper that sounded terrifying or a good cliffhanger, but definitely was not animated as such, because even with their, sort of like angry-ish faces, they still look pretty cute. They don't look nearly as threatening or as harrowing as the previous 2 cliffhangers that we ended on. So, given that I've really pumped up the last 2 about how much I like them, it was sort of jarring, this cliffhanger by comparison, that these cute little leopard seals are going to be offing Bazooka and Alpine. I don't think so. I also got a kick out of Bazooka, literally bringing up his bazooka, like that he would use it to blast those cute little leopard seals and, create God knows what kind of avalanche from that as well. But in any case, that is where this great episode, 3 Cubes to Darkness, ends. And like I've been doing now for the last couple of episodes, I've compiled a montage of quotes and moments that maybe I didn't get to specifically highlight or shout out as of yet. So enjoy.
What do you mean reservation? This ain't no hotel.
Okay, forget that. But I ain't seeing nobody with no parrot, no dog.
What parrot? What dog? Bark! All the world's a stage. William Shakespeare. What? Can it, bird brain? Shipwreck Delgado.
Here's some loose ends to tie you up, Destro.
Well, we can't just sit down and send out for pizza. If that cube's here, we gotta find it. Yo, Joe.
This place is vibrating like a $50 milkshake.
Man, now I know how frozen pizza feels.
I think the most difficult thing for me here at GI Retro so far has been trying to balance being as concise as possible versus trying to highlight all the great stuff that is in each and every episode. The cutting room floor is very difficult and very heartbreaking for me because every episode is just jam-packed with lots of stuff. Whether it's a little hidden highlight or just an obvious one, it's tough to narrow it down. So this montage feature that I've been doing is a way at least to include some more things in just a quick hitter style. So I hope you've been enjoying that. And to everything on the cutting room floor still, I'm sorry, you're still great. But with that, we do have a couple more pieces of business to get to. And let's start with this episode's Phallup of the week.
You're here because you're the industrial straight Phallup.
Thank you, Sarge. Now, unlike last week, in which there was really only one choice for pretty much all of the awards, here with the Phallup, we did have several candidates. So let's go through them. We had Airtight, stepping on that tile that activated the Ancient Guardians. And not only that, by activating the Ancient Guardians, as we discussed, cost several rank and file G.I. Joes their lives. They're definitely dead. So Airtight, a candidate for Phallup of the week. Then we had Paulie, last week's MVP by a mile. No one really I even considered. But this week, Paulie, whose mouth saved the Joes in the last episode, nearly cost them this episode. So the squawk giveth and the squawk taketh away, because Paulie almost gave away their position to Colonel Slash and his Cobra troopers, nearly getting them captured. So Paulie, you got to be careful of that. And then we've got Bazooka. Alpine tried to warn him, but Bazooka's big feet and maybe his fear of heights causing him to misstep. Him and Alpine both fall, giving away their position, ultimately triggering that avalanche that was nearly the DYD, and really, by all rights, could have been a great cliffhanger for this episode too if they didn't need to go in another direction. So that was very nearly the Phallup of the week. But none of those candidates are what I ultimately went with in this episode for Phallup of the week. And even though I think his look is really cool, and I would have loved to have had him as an action figure, as we discussed, the Phallup of the week to me is, in fact, Colonel Slash, because he had Shipwreck and Snake Eyes pretty dead to rights, along with Satin. You know, if he really could put two and two together and not see that she was clearly helping the G.I. Joe team escape. They're just on stage, and he gets inexplicably sort of discombobulated when they just kill the lights. They're still on stage, rushed the stage. We see them, again, I mentioned notes of Scooby-Doo with the chase in the backstage area. They run right by them, and Shipwreck just sort of pokes his head from out behind the curtain. And then ultimately, what sealed it for me is after charging into Satin's dressing room, her ability to just sort of verbally undress him and beat him down with her words, not only for him to back down so completely, but to beg for being a good word being put in with Cobra, and then for her to, you know, insult him multiple times, chuck a lamp at him, and him say, thank you. Essentially a thank you, sir. May I please have another? Colonel Slash, your Phallup for 3 cubes to darkness. All right. But where there's a Phallup, there is an MVP. So let's get to it at last. Episode MVP.
On a night where you thought, well, he isn't quite himself. How good can you be? MVP.
All right, episode MVP. And just like Phallup of the week, multiple contenders for the most coveted prize here at GI Retro MVP. And I have to start with an honorable mention. No, it's not going to bring him the honors, but I have to shout out once again, Snake Eyes breakdancing at Club Snake was awesome. It's so memorable. It's great every time I see it, whether it's watching the episode or a GIF popping up on social media. I love Snake Eyes doing the windmill and everything like that, and just really bringing it, even impressing Satin. It's great. Not going to win him the MVP, but I wanted to point it out once again here. But the actual candidates, we've got Alpine. Alpine really stepped up in a big way in this episode. I talked about it, that dynamic, the friendship between him and Bazooka. He was essentially leading the G.I. Joe team as they were up at the Mountain of Glass, yodeling to create a path for G.I. Joe to make their assault on Major Blood, and his control cube didn't work out, but still. And even after that avalanche, we get to see what kind of friend and what kind of teammate Alpine is, because when Bazooka comes up lame, Alpine literally puts Bazooka on his back to carry him to safety. So I thought that was really cool and really some standout stuff from Alpine. And then we have Roadblock. Roadblock was a one-man wrecking crew in the City of the Dead, like we discussed. I mean, taking it to those Ancient Guardians left and right, just destroying them, whether it was using a grenade, his bare hands, or whatever. Roadblock was absolutely destroying. And then he also captured one half of the Crimson Twins, who come into play later on in this miniseries. wasn't able to stop them, but neither was anyone in G.I. Joe able to stop those control cubes. But Roadblock had another really standout episode, dropped some more great dialogue, good rhyming from Roadblock. Love it. But he ultimately fell just short in bringing home MVP for 3 Cubes to Darkness. So that means, I don't know if you've guessed it at home, the winner of MVP, and for the first time ever, finally breaking through the G.I. Joe glass ceiling, a civilian will be winning MVP, and that is, of course, Satin.
Unbelievable. Go, baby, go.
The Cobra may have gotten away, but the MVP is not getting away from Satin. In my opinion, so well-deserved and a pretty easy call to make. The song alone makes her appearance here so incredibly memorable, elevates the episode. I love the Cobra That Got Away. And also just her entire character has such a cool factor about it. She helps rescue Snake Eyes and Shipwreck. I mean, she takes complete control of the whole scene in Club Snake, which in my opinion is the best sequence of the entire episode. So definitely deserves to be MVP. And then like we talked about with the Phallup, when Colonel Slash barges in, she doesn't back down. She verbally destroys this Cobra agent to where he is cowering, backing away, asking her to put in a good word with Cobra Commander for her. So definitely huge standout episode for Satin, and really deserving for her to be the first of the civilian characters to actually be named MVP of an episode. There were a lot of close calls before, but I'm glad it's Satin here because she's just so great. And while I'm on the subject of Satin once again, I neglected to mention something. If they ever do make an action figure of her, you got to include the portrait of Cobra Commander. But winning the MVP for 3 Cubes to Darkness is Satin. And that will just about do it for this edition of GI Retro. But be sure to let me know, who is your MVP, your Phallup, DYD, and the like. How do you rank the Cobra That Got Away versus Cold Slither? How do you rank Satin amongst the other civilians that show up in all these miniseries? She's at the top for me, but let me know where she ranks for you. And as always, please like, subscribe, share it with your friends, but most importantly, rewatch. Thank you so much for joining me here. Next up, Chaos in the Sea of Lost Souls as we continue on into part 4 of the Pyramid of Darkness. But until then, if you didn't know, now you know. Take it away, Flint.
And knowing is half the battle.